It's that time of the year where you start planning for next year. But what does that plan for your small business look like? How do you start it? And where should you keep it? We've got that and more on this episode of the Kawartha Small Business Podcast. We've got business conversations for the Kawartha commute. I'm Brian Rump.
And I'm Matt Garrity from Matty G Digital.
All right, Matt, it's that time of year where we start planning for next year. So, how do you do your planning?
I started planning earlier than I did last year, a couple months ago. I know we're trying to keep this as evergreen as possible, but this podcast and episode is going to be live December 2020, timely for end of year and going into the new year. But I started thinking more about business planning in October when my birthday was.
Ah,
Because I had this idea this year, and this is ridiculous and might be a good reflection of who I am and evaluation of who I am. But I started thinking, why do we spend so much time thinking about the new year at the end of a calendar year and not around our birthdays?
oh, that's a good idea.
So I was thinking, okay, my year is complete. I'm starting a new year of my life. I often wish people like happy birthday, have a great year. So I started to think more about that. Around October, I went out for like a long walk along the what's it called, the Orange Trestle Bridge.
Oh, yeah, the Orange Corners
Yeah.
Trestle Bridge, I think.
Have you been there?
No, but I've heard about it, and then since you went there, I've seen like so many people tagging themselves there. I feel like you're like the original influencer of that this time of year.
No, I had been seeing it for like years, and I was shocked that I had not been there yet. And it is so much nicer in person than it even shows up on camera. Like you kind of expect that you're going to get there, and you're like, whatever. But it's quite beautiful, especially in the fall. I'm sure it's nice in the summer, but anyways, so I went along for a walk there, and I was making a point of taking my notepad to sit down and like enjoy nature and reflect. And I sat down to do my goals on my notepad, and I remembered I had forgotten my pen back in my
Oh
truck.
yeah.
So I had to go old school and just use my cell phone to make notes.
Oh, okay.
Doofus, because I'm sitting out there in nature trying to like soak it all in, and people think I'm just on my phone, probably tweeting away or something like that. But I sat down and I put together like a bunch of notes on what my goals for this upcoming year were. Like I looked at
Okay.
last year's goals, which were revenue based, to be honest with you. I had some personal finance goals. I had some business things I wanted to focus on, like starting to pay attention to profitability, which is maybe a good idea. And then I had some more personal things that I wanted to touch on. So being active a certain amount of times a week, some mental health stuff a few times a week. I wanted to read 12 books, which is sad that I didn't even come close to that.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm going to get through 3 or 4, which is actually really good for me, and I'm progressing in the right direction. But then,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, there's some other things again that were personal / business related, and it seems like I didn't get very far with these ones, to be honest with you. Looks like I made notes though on what really worked this year for me, which was more reflective than planning. But I think I did take out of that like some new goals for next year. Much not as long as last year, but again, different revenue goal that was continuing to progress and improve. Some other business ideas that I want to get rolling this year, and then a general more business get insurance, which is maybe something I should confess that I haven't done. But this year I had I think I had get insurance in 2020, but I did not. I ended up getting an accountant / bookkeeper, which I also highly recommend to people. But it kind of
Yeah.
dotting some I's and crossing some T's. I guess also I did get a lawyer this year. That's not 100% confirmed, but moving in the right direction. Accountant, lawyer, and then hopefully insurance next year.
No, that's awesome. Like, I think you've summed up well just some of the momentum, right? Being able to, and one of the reasons to have writing down goals and taking the time and the intentional time away to like sit down, write out some goals, do some planning, whether that's, specific number goals or things you want to do. Um, it's really good. And then when you reflect, it's useful because you can look at, man, look at all the stuff that I did, right? Like when you wrote down read 12 books, you were probably was quite a stretch goal, right, for you. So to get to 3 or 4 is then pretty awesome, right? Now you can get through multiple books in a year.
Yeah.
So it allows you to sort of plan on, if that's something you want to continue doing more or make more time for, or if you think, oh, this is the right number, I just have to, stay at this number. It
Yeah.
gives you some of that context.
Yeah, for sure. The book thing was interesting. Like, I understand that reading is good for me. And I found that this year it was really helpful for a nighttime routine and like turning down for the night and all that kind of stuff. And then last year, I think I read 2 books, maybe 3. And I found that if I loved the book, it would take me a month, which is sad again, because my wife will read a book in 3 days. I know you're a big reader. I bet you read a book in 1 to 3 days. For me, a good book, I'm like, I can get this done in less than a month. So I thought, all right, I'm going to read a book every month. But then I got hung up on one book that I did not like. It took me like 6 months
Oh,
to get through. I'm currently on a book that I was really excited to read, but it's so heavy and
oh,
really fact filled. And it's not deep, but there's a lot going on. And I find I get through like 3 or 4 pages and I'm getting heavy on.
you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes like I have some of those where same thing, little chunks are, it can be hard to get through them all. So what I guess circling back a bit to planning, one of the things that's important to bring up is something called the planning fallacy. Have you heard of the planning fallacy before?
No.
Okay. So it's a sort of behavioral economics term. I sort of love talking about different sort of fallacies and heuristics or rules of thumb, but the planning fallacy uh, tells us basically that humans suck at planning. We're always a bit too aggressive and we're too optimistic about the things we can get done. I say this because we don't want to avoid planning, but it can help us be a bit more strategic in our planning. So things like not being super aggressive or super detailed, not trying to overextend. It's great to be able to look back a little bit as well to see what you did and then compare it so that you're not sort of beating yourself up because you way over planned and tried to take on too much stuff.
Right. That's interesting. I find now that I'm even looking at these numbers, I underplan in the sense of some of these numbers that I'm looking at. Like my 2020 goal for revenue, I blew through. So then 2021, I increased my goal a little bit, but honestly, I know that I'm going to blow through it again. And maybe I need to be not push myself with the goal, but get it to a more reasonable number, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. But where's that fine line, do you think?
I think it's you want it to be reasonable but also achievable, right? So if you look at some people use SMART goals, which is the specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. To me, I think I'm not as intent on having here's your million smart goals. To me, it's about identifying what you want to intentionally focus on and sort of having the process and the momentum going towards it. The other thing you can do with revenue specifically is maybe look at breaking down some of the activities or behaviors. So, how many clients do you want to serve? Could be one. The other weird thing, so this is one I don't think I've publicly said this before, but I had a goal at one point was how many proposals I wanted declined, because that's a sign of, you don't win everything you get. So it's a sign of sort of momentum and trying that I was getting, a good number of ones declined. Because you can't always control what your revenue is going to be based on the scope of work, but you can control doing the things you need to do to get more of the right type of clients.
Right.
So, and then, when you get into their conversations with them, then you could identify more things that they need. But what you don't want to be doing is sort of padding that just to meet your revenue goals, or falling a little bit short and feeling like you failed where maybe you've had a really awesome year.
Right. Yeah, I find with SMART goals, it can be overwhelming for a small business owner. There's too many little points where you talk about there's the main goal and then the subset of goals and how do you get to those subset of goals. It's too much in certain cases.
Yeah, and I think that's a big one too. Like, I'm not big on crazy big plans. I do think that you need to be intentional with your plan. You need to um, dedicate time for it. So, like how you went for a walk, sat down, it wasn't oh, I'm going to catch up on business. It was, I'm taking this time for me to plan. Depending on the size and scope of your business and how much you want to plan, you might need a couple hours, you might need a couple of days for that. But you need some intentional time, for that. But it doesn't need to be an exercise in creating like a giant, massive step by step plan with 80 million goals, because what's going to happen is your brain's not going to absorb all of those and you won't get to them all. You're much better identifying some bigger goals and focusing on those.
Absolutely. Focusing on those bigger goals and then actually putting tangible thoughts down. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but tangible goals. Because I think what I did when I first started specifically with some goals was I didn't really define what the goals were beyond make money, make
Yeah.
my business run well. I want things to be smooth. What does that mean? There's nothing tangible there. So it took me time or a couple shots at planning and putting some ideas together to realize from let's just use revenue again, because that's probably in most people's mind a lot of time, small business owners. Instead of saying, I want to make a lot of revenue, or I want to make more revenue this year than I did last year. Well, yes, of course. But what number is that? Is it
Yeah.
a percentage higher? Is it a definitive number that you want? And where's that number coming from? I even like for personal wellness things, they were around how often I am physically active and how often I meditate, which is something I found incredibly beneficial. And we could talk about that another time for small business owners. But so with the active thing, I put down, I want to be active X times every week. I want to meditate X times every week. Instead of just saying, be more active or meditate more than I did last week. It's
Yeah.
an actual number on these things. So you can sit there and actually quantify, did you succeed? Was this effective?
Yeah. And then it helps too when you don't succeed, then it starts helping you sort of evaluate why it went wrong, what you might need to change. So, for example, if you want to exercise 4 times per week, and you're going to go to the gym to do that. And that takes 2 hours out of your day between leaving, going, coming home, showering, recovering, resting. You need to have that time available to do it. So if you're not doing it, then you can look at what it is you need to do to change that. It's the same with things like revenue. It's one thing to say, okay, I want to make $1 million this year. Well, how do you break that down? Is it by week, by day, by quarter? So that you're able to be able to focus and measure on that and not just get to the end of next year and sort of, be surprised about it.
For sure. And that's how I think people fail at their goals often, is not having numbers that are too high, but often not putting them in a scope that they can control. So,
Yeah.
okay, I want to make X amount annually. In the first 3 months, you might not be close to that. You shouldn't be close to that. You probably aren't. You're going to panic. You're going to freak out. Like, well, that goal was not realistic. Or you're going to start making excuses. Instead, maybe you're putting things that the way I did it, which might not work for you, but it works for me, at least on the personal end of things, with being active and meditating, for instance. So weekly check-ins. Did I work out X those times that week? Revenue might be different. You might not want to look at things weekly. Depends on what your business is like. Retail might be something you're a bit more focused on the day-to-day. Services, maybe not. Monthly, I'm probably not the best person to talk about goals from like that perspective, but like, yeah, maybe it is monthly. I do unfortunately probably just look at the overall annual revenue, but I will say I've not had an issue with hitting my goals as I've started. I think in the future, even after this conversation, I'm recognizing it would be much more beneficial if I was like breaking that down quarterly. And then I can look at it every month. Am I close to that? If not, why? Am I on track for that? Great. Why? And continuing to break down those things.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, it's something different for everyone. The cadence is different for everyone. Some businesses might, daily need to look at things, weekly, monthly. Again, it really depends. I've helped lots of people sort of figure out what that means. And then there's the what to do about it, which is where, whichever area it is in planning, breaking down the behaviors and understanding that you can't fix everything all at once. There's a great quote that I'm stealing it from the West Wing TV show, but it's well attributed, but you can't turn all the wrenches all the time. So you can't be, and I think that's where other people fail. It's like they come up with these goals and they write down like 50 of them. They're all measurable. They have 100 behaviors that are going to help them get there. And then they fall flat in 2 days because you can't possibly focus on everything. So there a couple tips for that is, pick a big goal and work on it for, say, a quarter. If I can steal some language from Dan Sullivan, who has a business called Strategic Coach, in a quarter, you have 90 tomorrows. So, it really helps break down, into that time frame and pick 1 or 2 things you can work on during that time instead of trying to sort of meet all your goals all at once for that.
Yeah, for sure. What are some goals that you have, not personally, for like your personal life, but what are goals that you put out besides revenue, for instance?
For me, so like the number of proposals, number of conversations is sort of a big one. Number of projects can be one. I'm again coming up to needing to sit down and create some new goals for next year. I've been using sort of the calendar year, but I also more break it down by every, say, 3 or 4 month block for goals. One of my big goals is to be able to look back 6 months and be a little bit embarrassed by myself of like things I knew then versus what I know now. So I'm always trying to get better as a professional, learn more, um, you know, embrace my mistakes a little bit more. So again, my sort of behaviors or things I want to do could change, um, you know, within those times. I'm not a big fan of arbitrary goals. I used to work for the bank and I used to hate, every year you'd have your performance review and then they'd say, okay, now here's your commitments for next year. And they'd sort of hand you a piece of paper with all your goals on it with no input. And then they'd make you sign it. And then they'd be like, well, you committed to making, 5,000 phone calls. Why aren't you there yet? Type of thing. And some of them were sort of ridiculous flavor of the month kind of goals that just didn't work for how I operate. So I've been trying to, you know, break that down a little bit. The other neat, when I talk about that thing I've learned from Strategic Coach, and actually this concept just got released in a book last week called Who Not How. So you don't have to do it all yourself. So as a business owner, you wear a lot of hats, and we'll talk about some of those hats in a moment. But setting goals isn't an exercise in identifying how deficient you are and how maybe hard you have to work. But who not how is who can help you get those goals. So if you have a goal for sales and you're falling short because your marketing sucks, well, maybe Maddie G Digital can help you with that. You're still kind of in charge of that, but that's somebody who can help you. Just before we recorded this, I saw an ad on Twitter for a government agency that wants to teach small business owners how to do their own website development. And I think that's just an insane waste of time for most small business owners. It's a huge skill to try to do that, and you're taking away from what you do best. So you should be focusing on your strength and reducing your time everywhere else. So everywhere you're spending time on something you're not good at, you should be wanting to find someone else to do that for you or help you out with that so that you could focus on what you do best. And when you do that, you're going to start meeting more and more of those goals.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to take us off track with that, but I'm over here shaking my head, as Brian can see. I had no idea that. I think I actually kind of know what you're talking about, the ad, but I didn't see the ad specifically. But a web design project is going to take anywhere from 25 to 50 hours for a professional or a professional.
Yeah, if you know what you're doing, yeah.
Like someone that knows what they're doing. A professional team of web designers with the whole process. Small business owners are going to take at least twice as long as that, at least. And there's no turned out as good. That's wild. I had that epiphany sort of last year when going into this year. And I guess it was January when I was doing my taxes. And I was thinking, man, I'm all ahead of things. It's January and I'm getting my taxes together. And I didn't spend, I guess, a ton of time in the grand scheme of things, but it was probably close to 8 hours, 8 to 10 hours that it took me to put together all of my receipts from the whole year. And I didn't really know what I was doing. It was my first year business owner, and all the emails I was going through, nothing was really in an organized pile other than it was all in a folder, and I had to go through it all and break it down.
Which is better than a lot of people, but yeah.
I was so mad at myself. It was an awful 8 to 10 hours because I know what I was thinking in my head. I was so frustrated with myself thinking I'm not adding any value to this process and I am burning 8 to 10 hours of my life. That's 8 to 10 hours that I could be putting literally anywhere else. And I was so pissed at myself. And then I also recognized I was using another accountant, but she wasn't familiar with the bookkeeping, for instance, because I didn't have a bookkeeper. So I knew I was probably like missing out on certain opportunities. There was things that I knew that I was hoping she would ask and she never did. And there's just stuff like that that went on. So I knew like I spent all this time and it's not going to be perfect. And that is so frustrating to me for whatever it costs per month or year to work with someone that's just going to do this for me. It's going to be so much less stress. And the key to all of that is finding stuff to start at least that you don't think you're adding value to, and be super critical with yourself, because small business owners, we are all in some ways narcissists. We all
Oh yeah.
we all believe that we can do things better than other people. Let's be completely honest with myself.
Yeah, and you're usually capable enough that you can figure most stuff out. I'm the same way. I say I'm average at a lot of things, which is like, not amazing at it, but you can get by. But when you try to do all of them, it just, you can't possibly do it and efficiently run a business.
Yeah, like there's no point. What point did it have of me doing mine or putting all those receipts together, spending 8 to 10 hours of searching for all those receipts and presenting them to the accountant? Nothing. Provided no value to anyone.
Yeah.
Little things like that, and you start to wonder about that, and then little processes, things around your office or in your retail space. Maybe it's organizing the shelves or cleaning. Maybe those are things that you can get someone else to do because you're not adding value to them.
Yep.
I'm not just saying this because I am a marketer, but like marketing, you're probably not adding a lot of value to it. It's something that someone else can handle. Your accounting, your HR services, your what else? Like, there's plenty of things that you could be looking at.
Yeah. I was going to say, small business owner, whoever you are, you wear a lot of hats, and here's some of them. So, one is you're responsible for planning, which is what this podcast is about. So, just creating the plans for everything. Uh, some would argue that's all you should do is sort of create and manage the plans, but not do it. There's finances, there's the actual operations of your business, there's human resources, there's sales,
Yeah.
there's marketing, which sometimes sales and marketing are lumped in, but I think they can be two different things. There's customer service, administration, IT. Most businesses have pretty substantial IT needs, whether it's technical equipment or apps and stuff, maybe health and safety. Then you have a personal household to run.
Yeah.
Most people are, have family, kids. You have to be involved in that. There's personal development as well. So as a business owner, you want to be getting better at the things you're good at. So you need to have some time for, new training, development, reading. And then there's also fun. You got to plan your fun. So that's a lot of different things, that you kind of have to jam into a plan.
Yeah, and that's a lot. And you're bringing some value. Like, don't get me wrong, you're not providing anything beneficial to those conversations, but you don't need to be spearheading all of them. You don't need to be the person in charge of them. You need to be the leader, the manager, overseeing it. But you hire these people for a reason because they're the experts at what they do, and they can free up your time to do what you're better at.
Yep. Yeah, you want to do that. So, yeah, I think we've covered quite a few things. I sort of have one final thing to talk about, and that is how to organize your planning and goals. Because sometimes we take the step of getting it all together, and then it's like, like, where do I even start? Right. So you have all these goals. So I would say, and this is a little bit borrowed from Mike Michalowicz's book, Fix This Next. And in there, he has a tool called the Entrepreneur's Hierarchy of Needs, which is similar to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And he has sort of a way to go through a quick assessment to know what you should fix next. But just some of the common ones would be aligning your personal finances and being in charge of your business finances. So having the clarity to know what those are and make sure they're aligned. Just a side note, finances is what I do. And almost every business owner I meet isn't fully aligned with that, or they are, but not intentionally aligned. Also, there's getting paid for what you do. So if you're trying to meet some revenue profit goals, depending on your industry, you could have a lot of people who owe you a lot of money, and you need to tackle that. And that takes some effort and goals. There's completing your own work. You can't get paid for jobs in progress. So you got to do those. Building a sales funnel, which includes good marketing. Every business needs that, and every business needs good, consistent marketing. If you don't have that, reach out to us. We'll help set that up for you. And then just some systems and processes. That's another area that has big impact. So those areas will probably have the biggest impact for your business. Picking any of them will probably help, but you just gotta, focus on some of those goals and create some short-term mini goals to see the most progress that you have. All right, that's a long episode. Matt, do you have anything else to add?
No, I guess when you say create those goals, make sure you're putting them down somewhere, whether it's a notepad by where you sit at night or by your bed. And we all have the best intentions for that. But now we're able to carry around notepads in our pocket with our cell phone. So I've got a couple different notes that I have going for goals. So when we say create, make sure that they are in writing, because otherwise you're going to forget them, or you're going to make excuses or whatever. So make sure they're written down somewhere so you can follow.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'll just add to that I think handwriting them as much as possible is just good for our brains because it absorbs in. I keep a nice sort of leather bound notebook beside my where I watch TV in the evenings, and I use that. And I don't keep too much in there, so it's easy to flip back a year and see what I wrote before. Some people like to make posters of them, put them right on your wall. There's lots of those techniques.
I actually did that in college. It was highly effective. It felt really lame at the time. I think I did it recently too through some sort of sales training. I did. And it seemed so lame. You felt like you were a high school student doing like a collage for your partner or something like that. But it was kind of cool to see like and visualize the goals that you had and where you were trying to go with things. And in college specifically, I put it right at my desk, and I actually would sit there like, oh yeah, I'm going to be that guy one day. I'm going to drive a Cadillac CTS.
Ooh, nice. That's awesome. And some of those lame things work. And that's why they're sort of continual themes. You just have to sit down and do it.
Oh, for sure. Like planning is for nerds, but also planning works. And I bet you the most successful people in the world have planned things, and they adjust and they maneuver and they pivot and all those things. But it's the most probably effective thing to do for your business is actually plan and get these things down.
Oh, it's true. They actually sit down and they take that intentional time to plan. So, all right. That sounds like an episode to me. Thank you for listening to the Kawartha Small Business Podcast. If you would like us to help you with your planning, we'd love to try to set something up. So reach out at set it up at kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.